Hi, how are you, Delphine? We're live on Facebook now. Can
Hello,
you hear me?
Jonathan. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
It's great to see you. You're all the
Good
way
to
in
see you
Singapore.
too. Singapore misses you.
Oh, yeah, I miss Singapore. Yeah, Sydney's been amazing so far with the way that everything's been going and having lots of time to walk out in nature. Of course, social distancing and whatnot still applying. Um, and so, yeah, here we are. We're gathered here for another installment of Truth, Wisdom, and Freedom Conversations. I have here Delphine Supanya, who I know from Singapore, and we met 5 years ago at a workshop. And she was a client who became a friend, and now she's a colleague, and she's the founder of Well to Work, which is an organization that helps corporates find solutions for self-care to manage really mental health and overall well-being from the inside out. And so she's doing really fantastic work in Singapore, where she's spearheading a lot of this self-care initiative. And so today, the conversation we're having really is around selfishness and selflessness and the importance of self-care. And I love what Oscar Wilde says about selfishness. He says that selfishness is not living as one wishes to live, it is asking others to live as one wishes to live, which is a little bit difficult to wrap around. So if we kind of break that down into, um, well, is being selfish bad? Right? Is taking time for ourselves bad, especially during this pandemic where people are feeling the need to give, right? Especially as a service provider, someone who takes care of communities, a healthcare worker or a psychologist or a coach, right? We're in service. So, what is your take right now with the global pandemic and what it means to be in service to others as you are with these big corporate companies, and helping them through this time? And also balancing that with time for your own self-care.
That's a great question, Jonathan. Thank you so much. So I find mental health and self-care and well-being is now at the forefront of like almost every conversation anybody's having because there are less distractions. So people can no longer go out and meet people and just distract themselves with like the everyday of life. And a lot of people are stuck at home and with their families and working, and they're like, oh wow, like if it were to come to this, like why, how do I manage? How do I do this? And the answer often is I don't know. And it's because the answer is I don't know. Like we see a clear lack of education about self-care and well-being actually, and so it's really really important right now. And so my own experience has been, well, we had to completely transform our business, going from live workshops to completely doing everything via webinars and finding ways to create connection and contact through the camera, make it interactive through the camera so that people feel that they still have this human connection while being in front of a technology which seems to cut off even more and make that social distancing something that's even more present and out there. But we're finding actually that if you open yourself up to the possibility that it might be very similar to a face-to-face conversation, and you're open to that idea, that actually everything starts to shift and you yourself and me myself and then the people that we've been teaching are all saying, oh my god, it's actually very very similar, and but we just need to open the idea to ourselves. So then we go on to self-care practices, and people are researching it a lot. I find it's actually a very beautiful moment in time and in humanity where for the first time everybody's like, wow, what can I do to help myself? And then people who've been on self-care journeys don't feel alone so much anymore because their other friends and family are now reaching out to them. And so it's somehow creating so much more connection. And it is through reaching out to others and listening how they are and really asking, oh, how are you today? And asking many, many times. At the beginning, people say, oh, yeah, I'm fine. And then if you really ask and are there, they're like, actually, no, I'm not fine. And you're finding this realness in connection. And to come back to your quote, it's how others mirror you actually. You're like, oh, they're also not fine. So which means I need to take care of myself as well, that you take care of yourself much better. So when I see how others are struggling, I'm like, oh, it reminds me that I'm struggling too. And then I do what I need to do to self-care and to slow down and to recreate this balance between giving and being in service and then giving to myself. And it's not really a giving to others and receiving. It's really I give to others, I give to myself, or what is that interaction giving to me, but also what am I giving myself on a daily basis.
And I think to backtrack here, to give a little bit of context about Delphine and your relationship to wellness, because when I met Delphine, she had just recovered from a stroke, being a corporate lawyer. And so I don't know if you want to perhaps tell a little bit about your story and your relationship to your journey of dealing with a whole host of internal disorders with your autoimmunes, and then getting a stroke from working a very corporate job, and then going on a holistic healing journey, and what that was like for you, that then took you to a place of then being really impassioned about bringing mental, corporate, energetic, emotional well-being into the workplace. And talk a little about that in relationship to how you view wellness now and why it's so important as conscious leaders, in whether you're working with corporates or you're working with small businesses or you're coaching one-on-one, why it's so important to really be very clear about what wellness is. So what is wellness to you? I'm just going to grab a headset while you talk, okay?
To me, wellness is a balance. It's a balance between physical wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness, self-care, actually, I put out way up there, and interactions with others, and what I call the social. And it really is you need to have a holistic approach to it, because some people could, and I did that for a very long time, only take care of one aspect of my wellness. And I was focusing on my physical wellness so much because my body was sick. And it turned out that I was so stressed, so overworked, and I didn't sleep well, I didn't eat well. So my physical body had an autoimmune, and for the longest time I only focused on that, but without looking at the other aspects, which means that my balance was sort of, if you have a 5-star or a 5-pointed star, like one star with one arm of the star, which is pulled towards one end. And for me, wellness and actually well-being, we'll talk more about well-being, is a state of being well. We call that super well now. That's like our tagline. I like, you want to be super well. And so it is about balance, because if you do focus on one way too much, you're imbalancing out the other side. So it needs to be holistic. You need to consider all aspects of well-being, really.
And what's really lovely is that you came to that experience through actual direct experience. And this is something that ancient sciences, like in Ayurveda, which is the study of science, is the sister science of yoga. And this is something we know in Chinese medicine, which is in the West, oftentimes we define being well as okay, your symptoms are gone, right? But if we don't look at the root causes, which are oftentimes psychosomatic, which means that it's rooted in the psyche and also in the soma, the body, right? And that comes from really our thoughts and our intentions and the energies that we choose to cultivate on a daily basis. And I was watching a video of Dr. Bruce Lipton last night, who had this beautiful reminder to tell us that the kinds of thoughts that we're projecting out into the universe, we're like little radio stations, and all of the quantum science around now shows that we are creating the realities that we are inhabiting right now. So for example, there's the EEG, which were those sticky electrodes that would attach to your actual brain to scan the brain activity inside your brain, right? That's what if you needed to get a scan of your brain, that's what you would use. Now they have these magneto versions of it, the MEEGs, which are scanning the activity around your brain versus having it physically in contact with your skin. And what that means is that it's showing us that our thoughts are not in our physical brains and heads. I mean, it's, yes, that's part of it, right? But it's really telling us that consciousness and our intentions and the way that we cultivate our thoughts is so important to creating the internal environment that we're having and how that reflects outwards into the external environment. And so holistic wellness from an ancient perspective is really mind, body, spirit, all of these things that we know, which is very difficult to grasp on a daily basis because we know this on some intellectual level with all of the quantum science, neuroscience out there, right? But to practice this on a daily basis, I mean, what is the one key thing that you find is the reason that people fall into their old patterns and traps?
Selflessness, or the idea of selflessness, or not thinking about yourself, or not allowing yourself to be selfish.
Yeah. And this is the fine line navigating between the selfish and the selfless. I love what Michael Jordan says. He's, for those of you who are not into basketball or American sports, he was a very famous basketball player back in the day. And he says that to be successful, you have to be selfish or you never achieve anything, right? And then once you get to your highest level, then you can be unselfish. So there's almost a sequence in what a lot of successful people talk about. There's a sequence, almost a hierarchy of needs, almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where there's the 5 stages going up the pyramid. And the first is really about the physiological needs of, food, water, shelter, homeostasis, just making sure your body is functioning properly, you can digest and all those things. And then the second stage is safety. We're feeling secure in your profession, feeling secure in your family, your tribe, how you fit in there, right? And then rent, all of that stuff. That's part of being safe. And now at this time, especially with the pandemic, all of that is being threatened. So we're kind of at phase 2 on the Maslowian hierarchy of needs, which is around safety. We don't feel safe anymore. We don't feel safe because the government, we don't know what to believe. There's a lot of blame happening across, the world. And there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of guilting and blaming and shaming. All of this is just coming at us from the media everywhere, right? And then the third stage of the Maslowian hierarchy of needs is love and belonging, right? So then how do we fit in and belong? But it's really hard to figure out where we belong right now because we're fractured, we're divided, and there's this socially we're tribal creatures. We want to be in a unit, and that has been taken away from us. So now we're in this place of safety, because back in the caveman days, if you were ostracized or kicked out of your tribe, most likely you would die. You would not be, you wouldn't make it, because the wild was pretty wild back then, right? So you needed to belong in your community. And now that's kind of taken from us, and we're finding new ways to connect to your community virtually. And then when you have esteem and self-actualization at the 4th and the 5th at the of the Maslowian hierarchy of needs, and how can we get there? How can we get to a place of, being grounded in our self-confidence, in our self, a sense of accomplishment and self-achievement and self-purpose, if all of these things are not being taken care of? And that's where the value of selfishness really is really helpful right now at this point in time, because we're being forced to go back to take care of yourself one-on-one, right? And
yes, completely. And also, like, if you really consider it, if safety is shaken, you're like, although your exterior safety is shaken, but actually, if you look at yourself, we're really healthy human beings. You have your body is your home. So actually, by sort of projecting outwards, like coming back to yourself, like what do I have? I have this physical form. I have this physical body. It functions well if I nourish it well, if I sleep. You can recreate to actually find each of those 5 stages of well-being within yourself, and be like, well, actually my body, I'm here, I'm safe, I have a roof over my head. I don't know if I'm going to get paid next month. For some people, that's the reality, or I have no more money in my account. But however, I still have this. And it's really, instead of looking at everything that's outside, it's more looking in, but to list what you have instead of the would like to have, used to have, and want. And it's really come back to this, yes, exactly, this basic of actually, I have a form, I have a home, it's this. Even if for some time the roof is insecure, is like you don't know whether it's going to stay above your head, it is still above your head. So it's taking it day by day and being selfish, but selfish as in direct things back to yourself, and just look at whatever you're doing. Okay, I did this 110. I'm doing this writing challenge with a friend, and a few days ago it was write 110 things you're grateful for. 110 is a very long list, and it was really interesting because I listed. I was like, I have a healthy body, I have a roof over my head, and the first things that came up, and then I had a whole lot of people. I have food in my fridge. I have people who love me, opportunities, and times of crises are times to actually be really creative and break norms and do something completely different and new. So, and that's also selfish because you're like, no, actually, no, this doesn't work. I'm going to do something my completely own way. And I think in any recovery, healing, anything that you do, this is really how it comes back to. And in my recovery, it was the same. I went away from, I had the strokes, I had paralysis on the right side. I couldn't feel like things, half my face wasn't moving for the longest time, and so it was like, okay, everybody else is telling me to do this, but no, I think I should do this. And I did. And because of the selfishness, it creates this virtuous circle of self-sufficiency. And when we're self-sufficient, less things rattle us from the outside. So it's really about making sure that your tree, that your body is really strong. And this is the opportunity because, well, we have a lot of time to do that at the moment, right?
And I think, yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. And what I'm hearing is that there is a collective story about feeling bad, about feeling good, or doing the things that feel good within us. And that really comes from this conditioning that we have as a society to not take care of ourselves. I don't know how you grew up, but when, I grew up, with a lot of stories and fables and, like Aesop's fables and right, all of these things that we learn in school. You get children's stories read to you. And a lot of the morals of these stories, the mythologies that we are living now, is really based around you need to give back to others and you put yourself last, because if you're selfish, you're an evil person. And that's a very toxic story, even if that story has the best intentions and it's really about community and helping the collective thrive. It's not balanced. It doesn't make sense. That's only one piece of the pie. And so if we are existing on a day-to-day basis feeling bad that we're being creative, having fun, laughing, writing, not being able to find room in our lives for gratitude, that's not healthy, right? And so we have to really look at the underlying belief systems that we have come into this point in time with, and we have to really unravel that. And that's why, part of this self-care is self-development, spiritual work, meditation, doing a lot of inquiry-based training and asking the questions, why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I feel the way that I feel? Why does it take 40 minutes for me to not, be upset anymore and still throwing like this temper tantrum over, things that probably don't matter. I know it doesn't matter, but yet I'm having this reaction. There are people that are homeless in the street. There are countries where they don't even have running tap water and people dying from other things. And here I am complaining and doing all of this, right? So then we need to want to ask why. There needs to be a willingness to explore, right?
Yes, and we need to not feel guilty about it. because a lot of people are like, no, but I see them, they're straddling and they're running, and you can actually, the eyes are moving really fast, they have thoughts that just pop like so fast, and now I need to go and donate all this money to these people to help them. And then it's almost like your outward expression of your imbalance is actually what you need the most. Like if like I'm seeing some people, they're giving so much of their time to others, which is beautiful, but they are getting really unhealthy and they are becoming very unbalanced. And then it's really like and you had a call with Dion, I think, very recently, and his talk is now shown, like, has been seen by millions, about looking in the mirror. Really says that is, like, actually look in the mirror. What are all of your outwardly expressions of yourself mirroring back to you or trying to tell you? And I find that whenever I'm lost, I film myself and then I watch it again, and I'm like, okay, if I were talking to myself, like, what am I saying? I'm talking outwards, and analyzing that in this way, and then really being like, oh, what is my own reflection trying to tell me? Because our bodies and our souls and our emotions and everything that we are is constantly communicating back to us, and that's how we actually are outwardly to the world. But it's like it needs to come back, and so yeah, maybe to all the listeners, like, do what you're doing the most at the moment and see how that can be directed to you again, and there's an answer of the why.
Yeah, it's a reciprocal loop. It's otherwise we go into what you were talking about, compassion fatigue. That's a technical term. A lot of service providers, especially people that work in care facilities, they're all, or anyone that works in mental health as a clinical psychologist, this happens a lot. People burn out after 2 years, 5 years, because there's so much of this giving that you forget to receive. And yes, it may be, to our narrow, limited belief system, if we are in that right now, wherever you are and whatever walk of life that you've come from, if you feel that it's wrong to receive right now, right, just question that, right? It's not wrong to feel that. Okay, feel that, question it, and decide, do you want to continue feeling wrong for another week, another 6 months? Who knows how long we'll all be on this global lockdown? So if you're not receiving for 6 months, what is that going to do to your mind? What is that going to do to your physical health, to your emotions, to your passion, to your dreams, to what makes you feel most alive? What's that going to do? And ask yourself that, and see if there's a way for you to balance and marry both the giving and the receiving. One of the ways I'm nourishing myself right now is I'm going through a 10-day detox. I go through a detox twice a year and I'm on all of these greens. I'm on all of these supplements to help boost my the mitochondria cleansing out of my, all the crap out of my mitochondria. And I'm intermittent fasting, and I'm doing all of these things, and I'm really just retreating. I'm doing stuff. Yes, I'm giving, and there's some things that I'm offering out there to my community and my tribe, but I'm also making sure that I don't overextend myself and overgive. I just finished leading an 8-week program. I'm in a rest period now. Like, I'm giving, but I have a cap on how much I can give. And then there will be a point in time when I can give some more, right? And then I'll offer and be of service. But if we have to monitor ourselves, we have to be self-referencing and be very disciplined.
Yes, because life is not a marathon. Like, it somehow is, but you can't be running 80 years of your life in a marathon. Like, that doesn't work. Like, the body needs to sleep, it needs to rest. There needs to be a balance. Like, there are these really performing people who break records, but then they rest for a very, very long time, because it's just the natural balance of how the human body is. And like, I did this other exercise the other day where I listed like my family, my friends, my job, my career, my health, and the things that I want, and I scored from 1 to 10, like where I was in my life, my mental well-being, my emotional well-being. You can put in as many things as you want. It doesn't need to be a list. You're like, okay, this is important to me, and then just score it, and then just see how you score yourself, and if there's like a 1 or a 2 out of 10, like, what can you do and what actions can you take to rebalance that out so that it's more a 5 or 6 or 7, and doing this list, like I do it on a weekly basis, and it tells me where I am at, and then I take actual action or inaction, because I tend to do too much. That's why I had the strokes. I'm still type A and push and go. Like, I will not change. It is about me learning to manage myself. And so there are so many things, and I find people have inner wisdom. Like, if you trust your own instinct of what works for you, or take something and adapt it and make it your own, and add or subtract what works, what doesn't work, you'll find a way to self-regulate and really self-care. And so check in with yourself and be like, okay, so what last week, what was imbalanced? And then this week, strive to fix, like to take an action to balance out one. And if one was, I work too much and work less, or if one was, I just sat on my couch and did nothing. Ask yourself, did that nourish you or did that deplete you? You will know the answer straight away. Did your body feel tired or did you feel energized? And really have that as a gauge, and then see, like, and be honest with yourself. If it energized you or allowed you to rest, then you're giving to yourself, or receiving, how, like, depends on the words are interchangeable. If it depleted you, it probably means that it wasn't that right and balanced for you, and it put you out of balance. And so just consider, make the star list or any sort of list that works for you, and take action for yourself. It works.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love what you were saying earlier about gratitude and looking for what we're most grateful for at this point in time in our lives. And I think that's a very important practice to cultivate. Right? When I was in India and I looked around me, and there are all of these, people without homes, there's people without limbs, beggars on the street, right? And I spent a lot of time in India, on my spiritual journey. And we tend to take our condition patterns, our modern globalized set of belief systems, and we impose it on a completely, new terrain if we're unfamiliar with it. And I remember when I first landed in India, my very first trip, I was using Western, judgment systems and value systems to place on what I was witnessing around me. I'm like, oh wow, they don't have anything. I feel bad for them. And so then there's a lot of this outward pity, right? Which isn't very useful. Like, people don't need your pity, and that's not a very useful energy to emit, right? People, like, either feel something productive or don't feel that at all, right? And that really came from a sense of entitlement, right? It's like, oh, I feel I'm a better than and a worse than, right? Because we have these stories that we've been taught that, oh, I'm better off than this person because I have this and they don't have that. They don't even have a fork. They're living on the side of the street. And now, and the reason I bring that up is because you can see that happening now, because as material things are being taken from us, and also some of our freedom, like our rights of you can't go outside. Like, just the other day when I was out at the park, police officers are enforcing, and they're shooing people away, and you can't even sit in certain places anymore. But the intention is to corral people and make sure that there's social distancing in place, right? However, it does feel like our rights are being infringed upon, and that people are stepping on all these freedoms that we had, freedom to roam, the freedom to lay on the grass and be in nature and do all these things that we took for granted. But if we start looking at what's being taken from us, from our old patterns, our old belief systems from the past, and try to apply it now, we're going to be frustrated and we're going to be really upset, because whatever worked then is not going to work now. And the reason some people are feeling that they're stressed or anxious or frightened, whatever it is because they're carrying those past belief systems and programs that have worked then, and they're trying to carry it and make it work in this current structure, which doesn't work, because we have to create something new. We have to constantly redefine, reinvent, reinvestigate what is true and what's not true. And so as I was in India and I looked around, I'm like, wait a minute, these people have smiles on their faces, the homeless, the beggars, and they're actually quite content just living with, like, by the spontaneously every moment to moment. Of course I'm not in their heads, but I did notice something very different about the homeless there versus the homeless in the States. There's a cultural difference for sure, right? Because there wasn't a sense of like, oh, woe is me. It's more like, okay, this is where I am. This is my part of it has to do with the cultural mythology of reincarnation and karma, right? Which has its own other bag of worms. We don't have to get into that, but there's a sense of contentment of this is what I have, this is what life has given me. So I'm going to do what I need to do to take care of myself and also my family because we're homeless in the street. There's a connection to source and to God and their divinity, even in material scarcity, right? And that was something really beautiful to witness. And now that as we're getting things stripped from us, we really can only anchor into ourselves. That really is the only way. And if we don't anchor into ourselves, we're going to freak out. And if we freak out and create a ripple of freak out around us, then the whole world's going to freak out. And if the whole world freaks out, then that's the world we're going to live in. Governments will freak out. They'll start lashing at each other, being reactive. This is how wars happen. People freak out and they go into that old reptilian programming in their brain of fight, flight, freeze. And it's not this I don't envision, the new humanity coming forth following those old rules and paradigms.
Yeah. And the times of crisis are really an opportunity to become flexible and very creative. So if some things are no longer are stripped from you, it's like, oh, actually, is that entirely necessary for my being, for my living, and for me being happy? And often actually you'll find no. If we've been in confinement here for not even 2 weeks yet. Tomorrow it'll be 2 weeks, and people are freaking out because I can't go outside anymore. I can't walk, and we actually can't even sit and linger in the sun. We have to be like walking or running or doing something, and but it's only been 14 days, and so it's like, okay, so can you appreciate what you've got? Can you go back to that basic and be like, actually, you're alive, you're safe, you're breathing, and we're both meditation teachers, and yes, it comes back to here, to listen to the sound of your heartbeat. It's a very beautiful sound. Yes, birds chirping outside is even better, but we have our own sounds and reconnecting with that. And I think if we all take time to do this more, then yes, we won't be in a state of reactivity and then we can really think about our choices and create this world we want to live in. And now is the time to think about it. What kind of world you want to live in, and what are you going to contribute towards that, and what are you going to stop doing that was not necessarily contributing towards that vision before. And so I actually think it's a beautiful opportunity, and I've been really grateful for this period, because it's questioning a lot of values and paradigms that we no longer want, actually, us as well. I'm in the workplace and HR world, so we call ourselves the millennials, right? Our generation, who are now in leadership positions, and we compose the majority of humanity now, in the Western world, our age group. So it's up to us. It's up to us to create whatever we want, and because some structures are falling apart, why not actually take this as an opportunity to center, to prepare, and roll that out. I've been doing that, and it's been providing a lot of satisfaction and peace, and I'm like, oh yeah, actually I'm doing something about it finally. And so instead of being, and I was afraid, but instead of being afraid, I come out, sit with the fear, be with it, and then come out of it and act in a balanced way.
I love that. Yeah, sit with the fear, be with the fear, and then move through it, whether that's in action or being, right? Doing and being, this sacred dance. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and for sharing your time this morning with me. Morning time in Singapore. It's afternoon now, past noon here, almost 12:40 now in Sydney. And is there anything else that you have to share about anything, or should we leave it at that? And if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to comment in the live. There is for sure a lag time between our live experience and what you guys are seeing. But if there's anything, feel free to share. Is there anything you'd like to add, Delphine?
um, just believe in yourself, you know, and remember that you are your own medicine, and that you've got all the tools that you need just right here. It's all here, and you can reach out to others and go externally and just look inside and feel what that is and live that. It's a good place to start.
All in here.
All in here.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Delphine, for your
Thank
time.
you.
And thank you everyone who's watching live and also on the replay. Thanks so much for tuning in, and catch you sometime soon.
Thank you, Johnson. It's good talking to you again.
Good talking to you. Bye.
Bye.